I'd make four or five points about Russia so that people understand, what is the importance of that relationship. First of all, if you look at the map of Eurasia, there's a very simple, obvious strategic proposition there, which is you have, if you look at the big countries of the Eurasian landmass, it makes sense for those countries who don't have direct borders with each other to develop strategic relationships, which is how they serve each other's interests. And for us, our own history after independence, we've never really had anything other than a positive experience with the Soviet Union and then with Russia. Secondly, during the period of the Cold War, when the US and Western countries generally tended to prefer, at least in our region, dictatorships like Pakistan, we actually had a 40-year period where the West was primarily arming Pakistan, and we turned to the Soviet Union as a military partner. So we have, a long defense and security relationship, other than the strategic and the geopolitical equations of which I spoke about. The third point, I would say, is economic. Today, if you look at India, the nature of the Indian economy, we are large natural resources consumers. And for us, the natural resource exporters of the world hold a very special significance, And so it could be a Russia, it could be an Australia, it could be an Indonesia, it could be the countries of the Gulf for energy requirements. As Russia today turns more towards Asia because of its current tensions with the West, for us, there are certain economic complementarities here which come to fore. So there is today, I would say, a kind of a geopolitical case for the relationship, a military security case, economic one as well. Now, how do you reconcile this with a growing relationship with the US? I would even say growing relationship with Europe, because that relationship has also grown. As I said, look, it's a multipolar world. Different poles deal with each other. We're no longer in a world where the relationships are exclusive. Every country wants to get the best out of the international order in the most effective way it can. So it requires, a certain amount of care and, I would say, perhaps dexterity to manage it. But it has to be done because, it's not feasible to expect that big countries constrain their options and don't deal with other countries, not because of their interest, but because somebody else has a problem with those countries.
All right, that's a very provocative answer. India is more than capable of walking and chewing gum at the same time and doing a lot more besides that. Against all of these stresses and volatility, what are some of the drivers of progress? What are some of the anchors in the relationship that may keep the progress going forward in the U.S.-India relationship in the face of inevitable change?
Well, look, I would really describe the changes in India-US ties as probably, certainly for an Indian, it has been the biggest foreign policy, I would even say strategic transformation of our lives. We had seen, if I were to take the approximately, 75 plus years after our independence, we had that initial period of non-alignment, then as we looked at US, China, Pakistan coming together in the early 70s, you had an Indo-India-Soviet Union response. Then you had the end of the Cold War, the breakup of the Soviet Union, and which in many ways allowed India and the US to both readjust their positions and look at each other very differently. It took some time for that logic to unfold. Part of it was declogging the system from the obstacles and the impediments of the earlier era. Part of it, and I say this from, again, a purely Indian perspective, our own hesitations which limited the advancement of those ties. And I would say in the last decade, where those hesitations, the ideological hesitations were not there on the Indian side, we've allowed the natural forces driving that relationship to take it forward. So what are those forces? Obviously, one part of it is the strategic recalculation that we are seeing in the global order today. Different countries reassessing their relationships depending on where they see the value of that partnership. And on the Indian side, a perception that the US, our strategic assessment of the US today is positive, which was not always the case before. On the American side, I think a much greater willingness to partner with a country like India, which is not a member of an alliance or a treaty partner. So you've actually, and you can see that today in the Quad, but in the bilateral India-US relationship as well. So you can see the defense side of it, the security side of it, the political side of it, the diplomatic side of it, play out. The second is, of course, the economic convergences, and there, I think particularly the technology side has been strong, but I would suggest to you it'll get much stronger in an era in a digital era, in an AI era. I think there's a much greater possibility of a coming together of our economies. And the third would be really, in a sense, I would say the societal part of the relationship. That if one looks today at the Indian community, the Indian-American community, the bridge that it constitutes, and in many ways it's been a very unique community in the US that it's kept its links with its home country very strong. And that has been a very big asset to the relationship. So I would really say very objectively that, India, the change in India-US ties, it's been very significant in the last, maybe I'd say 20 years plus, 25 years, but definitely it's come into its own in the last decade. And you can, I can give you a range of examples. And the most obvious one would be even in defense, that a country which, where we had virtually no military relationship for 40 years, from 1965 till 2006, where there was not a single American platform in our inventory. Today we operate 4 American aircraft, I think 3-4 helicopters, so land-based systems. So you can see that as one example, but I could cite to you many others.